When the two people I trusted most ripped my life apart, they expected me to break. What they didn't know was success doesn't come from revenge, it comes from rising, quietly and completely. If you believe in turning betrayal into power, subscribe and stay with me for more. My name is Amanda Sinclair. I'm 38, a corporate strategist turned silent partner in my husband's thriving tech company. At least, that's what he thought. It was a Thursday when the air shifted. You know that feeling? When something walks into the room before the person does, the kind of chill that slips under your skin before the truth even forms a shape? I had just set down the espresso on Daniel's desk, my husband, the CEO, the man who once said I was the reason he learned how to dream bigger. The kind of man who'd once mapped out our whole life together on a napkin at a cheap Italian place in Queens. He was on a call. I was about to walk out. But then I heard her name. Yeah, babe, I'll tell Amanda I'm heading to the expo early. Just make sure you pack the red dress, the one from Cabo. He laughed. That smug, bedroom-laced chuckle I hadn't heard directed at me in months. Her voice came through the phone, faint but unmistakable. Vanessa. My best friend. My college roommate. The maid of honor at our wedding. My lungs forgot how to work for a second. I placed the coffee down without a word, backed out of the room, and closed the door gently. He didn't even notice. That was Daniel in a nutshell. Always so sure he had everything figured out. But what he didn't know? He didn't know the name on the dotted line, the real owner behind the holding firm that bought out 62% of his company last year when he needed emergency capital after his last failed-up rollout. He didn't know that every time he walked into board meetings, every major decision he'd made for the past 14 months had gone through me. And suddenly, the betrayal didn't just sting. It burned. Because he hadn't just cheated on his wife. He'd stabbed the hand that built his empire. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even text Vanessa. I went home, poured a glass of Malbec, opened my laptop, and logged into the board portal. Daniel didn't know it yet, but his exit interview had already begun. And I wasn't just planning to leave him. I was planning to bury him, in boardrooms, not bedrooms. By the time Daniel came home that night, the wine bottle was half empty, and I'd already drafted the agenda for the emergency board meeting. He walked in whistling, like he hadn't just turned my life into a cliché. Hey babe, he said casually, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. I've got an early flight to Vegas. Tech Expo, remember? I just smiled. Of course. The red dress packed? He froze for half a second. A blink, a twitch in his jaw. Then he laughed like I'd made a harmless joke. What? I sipped my wine. You know. The one from Cabo. He studied me for a beat too long. You okay? Never better. I got up and kissed his cheek, careful not to linger. Flight's at 6, right? I'll make sure the car's ready. The next morning, the moment he was airborne, I sent out the board meeting invite. Confidential. Mandatory attendance. All 7 members. 1 week from Friday. The subject line was simple. Strategic reorganization. Daniel wouldn't suspect a thing. Not yet. Because here's what he'd never bothered to learn. When he begged for capital last year, the private equity firm I'd quietly created, Sinclair Asset Holdings, was the one that swooped in. Under the guidance of a ghost investor. I paid cash. Clean, quick, no strings. Except there were strings. 62% of the company. And a clause, buried in page 17 of the acquisition doc, that gave the majority shareholder authority to call a vote on CEO performance and leadership suitability at any time, with or without cause. Daniel signed it himself. He was too busy preening about saving his company to notice whose pen name was buried in the paperwork. Amanda Sinclair, babe. Not the housewife. Not the helper. The owner. Vanessa texted me 2 days later. Hey. You free to grab drinks next week? Been way too long. No shame. No hesitation. That was always her way. She played sister to me for 15 years, and now she was slipping into my bed like I wouldn't notice the imprint left behind. I didn't respond. Instead, I went to our legal team and initiated a background audit on all department heads. Daniel had stacked upper management with frat bros and poker buddies, people loyal to his ego, not the company. My lawyer, Genevieve, raised an eyebrow. "Your cleaning house?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm gutting it." And just like that, the countdown began. The day before the board meeting, Daniel FaceTimed me from the Bellagio. Shirt unbuttoned. Glass of whiskey in hand. Music playing behind him. "You should be here, babe," he slurred. "Biggest deal of the year's about to go down. I'm about to be very rich." I smiled sweetly. "Oh, I have no doubt." And I didn't. Because after tomorrow, he wouldn't just lose his job. He'd lose the one thing he loved more than Vanessa. Control. Friday morning, I wore black. Not out of mourning, far from it. It was war paint. Tailored suit. Hair sharp. Pearl earrings, like the ones I wore when Daniel proposed, back when his ambition looked like love instead of obsession. The boardroom felt colder than usual. Tense. Daniel was already seated at the head, legs crossed, signature smirk locked in place. He didn't know yet. "Morning, everyone," he said. "Excited to share some good news. Just closed the pre-deal stage on the Nexus acquisition. This could take our revenue up 35% by the third quarter." "That's not what we're here to discuss," I interrupted, sliding into the seat beside him. He blinked. Confused. "Amanda? Why are you?" I opened my folder and slid a thick packet across the table. "Motion to review and vote on CEO performance. Per Article 4, Section C of our shareholder agreement." His smile cracked just slightly. What is this? What the hell is going on?" The board looked around nervously. A few of them glanced at me, then back at Daniel. They knew. Most of them had known for weeks. "I'm invoking my rights as the majority shareholder," I said calmly. "This is a performance review. A vote of confidence. Or lack thereof." Daniel looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. "You're not a shareholder. Sinclair Asset Holdings is mine." I met his eyes. "I own the firm. And through it, I own 62% of this company." Silence. Just the soft hum of the AC. Then Daniel shot to his feet. "This is a joke." "You're joking. Amanda, Jesus, you don't know what you're doing." "You're not, this isn't your world." I stood too, slowly. "You're right. It wasn't. But while you were busy playing king, I was building the castle." The vote was quick. 6 out of 7 directors voted for his removal. 1 abstained. His college buddy, Troy. I already had an exit plan for him drafted and ready. Daniel didn't speak. Didn't storm out. He just stood there, eyes hollow. Like the room had shifted beneath him and he couldn't find his balance. When it was done, I walked up, took the CEO placard from the table, and handed it to Genevieve. "Deliver that to HR effective immediately." "You can't do this," he finally choked out. "You can't." I just did. And then, softly, so only he could hear. "You shouldn't have mistaken silence for weakness. Or loyalty for blindness." That night, I went home alone. No celebration. No champagne. I didn't need to toast to my revenge. Because real power doesn't scream. It signs. And mine was signed, sealed, and delivered. It was 3:12 p.m. on Saturday when Vanessa showed up at my door. No call. No warning. Just her standing there like some twisted ghost from my past, clutching a Dior purse like it might protect her from what she'd done. "Amanda," she said, too casually, like nothing had happened. We need to talk. I didn't invite her in. I let her talk from the porch, eyes shifting, lips twitching as she tried to read my face. I didn't mean for it to happen. Daniel and it just got complicated. I didn't want to hurt you. She still hadn't said sorry. Not once. I crossed my arms. You didn't want to hurt me, so you took my husband behind my back? Lied to my face for months? She flinched but didn't deny it. We didn't plan it, Amanda. It just happened. I almost laughed. That line, so tired, so weak. I'd heard it in movies, in trashy novels, never thinking I'd one day stand on my own porch hearing it from my so-called best friend. Then she said it. The real reason she came. Daniel told me what happened at the board meeting. He's a wreck. He said you manipulated the entire thing. That you set him up. Now it was my turn to blink. Set him up? Vanessa, the only thing I did was give him room to hang himself with his own arrogance. Her expression changed then. A flicker of panic. You're not really planning to keep control of the company, are you? She asked, voice tighter now. You're not, cut out for that world. There it was. The truth under her designer lipstick and crocodile tears. She didn't come to apologize. She came to reclaim what she thought she'd won. I took a deep breath and leaned against the doorframe. Let me tell you something, Vanessa. I didn't just inherit power. I built it. Quietly. Strategically. While you two were too busy playing house in hotel rooms, I was putting the company back together after Daniel nearly tanked it. She blinked. Hard. Wait, what are you saying? I'm saying, I said slowly, that your little affair cost him everything. And now, I'm going to make sure it costs you, too. The next day, I had Genevieve do a deep dive into Vanessa's boutique business. Turns out, my name was still listed as an initial investor. I'd helped her secure her first lease. Set up her marketing. Gave her enough to grow. Big mistake on her part. She never filed the proper ownership restructure. Which meant legally, I was still a 30% silent partner. And legally? I had the right to pull funding, challenge spending, and, if necessary, petition for full control in a dispute. I wasn't just going to take Daniel's kingdom. I was going to torch hers too. Vanessa's boutique was her pride and joy, V-Lux, a swanky, overpriced excuse for a fashion house that sat on Melrose like it belonged on Fifth Avenue. I'd helped her get it off the ground back when I believed in friendship more than contracts. Now, I believed in leverage. Genevieve and I walked in unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon. She wore her sharpest suit. I wore red, power red. The same shade Vanessa once claimed made me look too intimidating. Perfect. A young clerk looked up nervously. Can I help you? Tell Vanessa Amanda Sinclair is here, I said, cool as glass. She'll want to clear her schedule. A few minutes later, Vanessa stepped out of her back office, all fake smiles and forced charm. Amanda. I didn't know you were coming by. No, you didn't, I said, walking past her like I owned the place. Because I did. We sat in her office, Genevieve unpacking paperwork while Vanessa grew more pale by the second. I just came to discuss the status of your silent partner, I said. You remember, don't you? The one who helped fund your launch? Vanessa's throat worked. Amanda, that was years ago. We never. I mean, I thought we dissolved that. You thought wrong, Genevieve cut in. Legally, Ms. Sinclair still owns 30%. And considering the recent, emotional and financial entanglements between parties, we believe a restructuring is in order. Vanessa looked at me, her jaw set. You're doing this out of spite. No, I said softly. I'm doing this out of clarity. You made a mess of my life. Now I'm cleaning house, starting with yours. By Friday, I'd filed a motion for control of the boutique, citing financial mismanagement. My team had found inconsistencies in the books, nothing criminal, but enough to raise eyebrows. Enough for leverage. Social media caught wind. One post. A leaked boardroom photo. Then another, an anonymous tip about a CEO ousted by his secret majority holder wife. By Monday morning, #Sinclair Power was trending. Vanessa tried to call. I didn't answer. Daniel emailed. 3 words, "You've made your point." But I hadn't. Not yet. They thought this was about revenge. It wasn't. This was about rewriting the rules. About taking back every inch they stole, every lie, every smirk, every time they treated me like I didn't matter. That night, I stood on my balcony and looked out over the city. LA shimmered like a promise below me. I hadn't just survived betrayal. I'd turned it into a blueprint. And I wasn't done building. I should have expected Daniel wouldn't go quietly. The man who once brought me coffee and kissed my forehead before board meetings was now staging a proxy war. Whispers began, questions about the legitimacy of my stake, rumors that I was leveraging emotional distress to dismantle a once thriving company. By Thursday, an anonymous blog post surfaced, accusing me of sabotaging my own business for revenge. It was well written. Polished. Deliberate. I didn't need a smoking gun to know Daniel had something to do with it. So I met with him face to face. He was waiting for me in the cigar lounge of the Wilshire Club, his favorite haunt, the one I'd never stepped foot in during our marriage. It felt symbolic. Like he was still clinging to the last place he thought I wouldn't follow. Too bad. I'd brought heels sharp enough to puncture egos. I thought you might show, he said, standing up just long enough to pretend we still had civility between us. Didn't peg you for a gossip blogger, Daniel, I replied, sliding into the seat across from him. But the smear campaign? Predictable. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You embarrassed me. Publicly. You hijacked a company I built. I stared at him for a long moment. No, Daniel. We built it. But when it mattered, you treated me like a secretary with a big wallet. He leaned forward. Fine. You win the game. But here's the problem with queens, Amanda. Everyone wants to knock them off the board. I didn't flinch. Let them try. I don't just play the game, Daniel, I rewrite the rules. When I got home, Genevieve was waiting with updates. Daniel's filed for an emergency injunction, she said. Claims breach of fiduciary duty, abuse of power, gender bias accusations, you name it. Of course. He couldn't beat me on the chessboard, so now he was flipping the whole table. What do we have? I asked, already pulling my blazer off. A hell of a lot more than he does, she replied, her eyes gleaming. You were smart, Amanda. Everything's documented. Transparent. But what? She hesitated. Vanessa's agreed to testify on his behalf. I didn't sleep much that night. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger. It was something deeper. Sadder. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed me once, she was choosing to do it again. For what? Loyalty to a man who discarded her the moment things got tough? Or maybe, deep down, she just couldn't stand watching me win. Either way, she was stepping into the ring. Which meant she'd better be ready for the fight. The courtroom wasn't cold, but I shivered anyway. Not from nerves, from calculation. From fury sharpened into strategy. Daniel sat 2 rows ahead with his attorney, his tie slightly crooked, his jaw locked tight like he was chewing broken glass. And beside him, Vanessa. Wearing all white. The irony was too loud to ignore. Genevieve leaned in close. You ready for this? More than ever. Judge Branson was a woman in her 50s with a reputation for cutting through corporate theatrics. That worked in my favor. Daniel's legal team came in swinging, with glossy timelines and doctored narratives, accusing me of intentionally undermining operations for personal revenge. I let them talk. Because when it was my turn, I didn't defend. I revealed. Emails. Texts. Recorded boardroom votes where Daniel ignored financial advisors and pushed high-risk deals to show off. Meeting notes Vanessa forwarded to him behind my back. Resignation letters from top staff who quit because he created a toxic work culture. And then I said what I hadn't said aloud in public yet. I didn't hijack this company out of spite. I saved it out of necessity. Because the man sitting across from me treated his title like a toy and his marriage like a costume. Gasps. One or two reporters whispered into their phones. Vanessa's face turned ashen. When the judge recessed for deliberation, I stepped outside and found myself face to face with Vanessa near the marble lobby. She didn't speak first. I did. Tell me something, I said quietly. Was it worth it? Burning everything down just to have him? Her voice cracked. I didn't think it would go this far. It always goes this far, I said. When you lie to someone who trusted you, there's always a reckoning. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. You know, she said, eyes filling with tears, there were days I envied you. The way people listened when you spoke. The way Daniel looked at you before he started chasing shadows. I almost pitied her. Almost. But not quite. The judge's decision came in under an hour. I retained full controlling interest. Daniel's emergency injunction? Denied. Vanessa's boutique? Frozen pending investigation into financial misreporting. Daniel was finished. Vanessa had tied herself to a sinking ship. And me? I walked out of that courthouse with my head high, my heels steady, and my name on every headline. Winning felt quiet. Not because it wasn't sweet, but because the noise had settled. The chaos, the betrayals, the lies, they were finally laid bare. There was nothing left to hide behind. No more pretending. Just power, truth, and ashes. Daniel resigned from the company officially 2 days after the hearing. His statement was polished, full of corporate jargon and not a shred of accountability. He blamed creative differences and internal restructuring. Whatever helped him sleep at night. I sent out a company-wide memo the next morning. Effective immediately, we will be implementing a culture of transparency, innovation, and respect. No more old games. No more closed doors. This is a new era, one led with integrity. Let's rebuild something we can all be proud of. The responses flooded in, emails, Slacks, even handwritten notes slid under my office door. People were relieved. Energized. Hopeful. For once, I didn't feel like I was carrying the company alone. Then came the interview requests. Bloomberg. Forbes. Even a morning show. They wanted to hear from the woman who silently owned her cheating husband's empire. I agreed to one. Sitting across from a seasoned anchor, lights hot on my skin, I told the story in my own words. Not the headlines. Not the scandal. The truth. How did it feel, the anchor asked, to take back control in such a personal, public way? I paused. Then smiled. It wasn't about taking control, I said. It was about never giving it away in the first place. I just stopped letting people convince me I didn't have it. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Hey, Daniel's voice said, cracked and hoarse. I didn't speak. I just wanted to say. I didn't see you. Not really. I think I thought you'd always be there. No matter what. I closed my eyes. And now that I'm not? I asked quietly. There was a long silence on the other end. I'm sorry, he finally said. For all of it. I could have said a lot. That I forgave him. That I didn't. That he was a fool, or that I was stronger now because of it. But instead, I said the only thing that mattered. Goodbye, Daniel. And hung up. 6 months later, I was standing in front of a crowded conference hall in New York City, headlining a panel titled Women Who Reshaped the Game. My story had gone viral. Not because I sought fame, but because too many women saw themselves in my silence, in my strength, in my scars. Before stepping on stage, Genevieve looked at me and whispered, "You're not just a CEO anymore. You're a symbol." But I didn't want to be a symbol. I wanted to be a blueprint. After the trial, I didn't just return to my old role, I reimagined it. I stripped the company down to its bones and rebuilt it with new blood, new values. I hired people who had been passed over for not fitting in. I funded young women with big ideas and no connections. I created space where power didn't require a last name or a bank balance. The company grew, faster than it ever had under Daniel. Investors noticed. So did the media. Daniel? He faded from headlines within weeks. Last I heard, he was consulting part-time, quietly licking his wounds in a rented condo in Miami. He reached out again once, a long-winded email laced with nostalgia and regret. I didn't reply. Vanessa's boutique shut down 3 months after the hearing. She tried rebranding, moving locations, but her name had become too toxic. She'd made herself famous for betrayal. And in this city, reputations stick harder than spray paint on marble. I never spoke to her again. The real win, though, wasn't corporate. It was personal. I moved into a modern brownstone just outside the city. One with thick walls, warm lighting, and a back patio where I could drink tea and hear my own thoughts again. I reconnected with people I drifted from. Laughed louder. Slept deeper. Started a mentorship program for women in business. Donated anonymously to a support fund for betrayed spouses navigating financial traps. I even got back into painting, something I hadn't done since college. My walls were soon filled with streaks of color and chaos that made perfect sense to no one but me. Freedom looked like that, messy, honest, and unfiltered. One evening, I hosted a private dinner for my executive team. We toasted under string lights, surrounded by blooming jasmine and good jazz. Everyone talked shop, sipped wine, and leaned into the kind of comfort that's earned, not bought. And as I stood at the head of the table, I realized. This wasn't revenge. This was redemption. I didn't destroy Daniel. I outgrew him. I didn't humiliate Vanessa. I removed her from the chapters she never deserved to be in. And I didn't just win the war. I rewrote the story. Mine. You know, for a long time I let people ride over me, until I picked up the pen myself. This wasn't just a story of betrayal. It was about remembering who I was before they tried to dim my light. If you've ever been underestimated, abandoned, or broken down by the people you trusted most, know this, you're not alone. And you are never powerless. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from, or just say, "I'm still standing." Your strength matters here. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Your support helps me keep telling stories of justice, resilience, and finally getting the ending we deserve. Thank you so much for watching. Stay strong.